Yes, welcome into Sports Bit Betting Insight today, Wednesday, October 26th. Big game breakdown. We got two segments today. The deep dive will be the doubleheader on ESPN when the NBA with the Lakers and the Rockets and OKC and the Sixers. We got a lot of football Thursday and Friday, so we'll start with Jacksonville and Tennessee in the NFL. We have Virginia Tech, Pitt, and Cal USC in college. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. Let's start. The NBA's back. LeBron James with a triple-double. Didn't even play that much. The Cavs blow out the Knicks. And oh no, the Ron Baker 3 puts the total on 205.
Yeah, I mean, why is Ron Baker in a Wichita State uniform in this picture? He's the 15th guy off the bench. I couldn't even find one off of him in a Knicks uni. Hits the 3, of course, 5 points in the last 20 seconds of that blowout game. And the total, open 203, spent all day bouncing between 204.5, 205, closed 206. And yeah, that Baker 3 lands right on 205. The first game of the season, and the books get clobbered on a total that falls right in the middle. How about that? But LeBron, 19 points, 14 assists, 11 rebounds. Cavs good or Knicks bad, Paulie?
A little bit of both. Very disappointed in the Knicks. That was a no-show. Oh.
Yeah, teams that get blown out on opening night in games where they're supposed to step up, to me, that's as big a red flag as you can get for a New York Knicks team that has come out of the gate pretty slow in just about every recent season.
Yes, some wise guy money on the Spurs. The Warriors were a bad bet. Man, they were getting killed in that game. Second chance points, bench points, Golden State blown out in those two categories.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to tell you yesterday, Paulie. I tried to tell you. You didn't want to listen. You mocked me, if memory serves correctly.
Oh, they'll be fine. What, are you going to overreact to one game?
Not as good right now as they were last year at this time, Durant or no Durant. Remember what they did last year coming out of the gate? That was a focused, poised championship team. This is a team with a lot of new pieces. It's going to take some time with Golden State. Don't put the cart before the horse with that team, and last night clearly showed it.
All right, and that should not happen. They have 4 of the top 20 players in the league. They should be get this freight train a-rolling. But a nice job by the Spurs, and they could not handle a Marcus Aldridge. And Gasol, it looked good as well. World Series recap. Game 1 goes to the Indians. Kluber was the man. 8 strikeouts in the first 3 innings. And Perez hits 2 home runs. Lester, kind of off. Lindor delivers again. Cleveland wins Game 1.
Yeah, and it was a best-case scenario for Terry Francona. Certainly when it came to Corey Kluber in that game. Kluber threw 6 shutout innings. No walks, 8 strikeouts, all in the first 3 innings. He struck out, 8 batters? 8 of his first 9 outs were of the strikeout variety, and he was out of the game at 88 pitches. So he's fine for Game 4, and potentially fine, in theory, should there be a Game 7. But that was absolutely a best-case scenario for Cleveland in that regard. That being said, Andrew Miller, he got really stretched out, 46 intense pitches. I don't think he goes tonight. He saved the game. Miller doesn't get the win. He deserves a win in my mind. When the Cubs had the bases loaded and nobody out after Javier Baez hit that little flare to left, and Miller goes 1, 2, 3 and gets out of that jam without allowing a run. It was ball game over at that point before the late home run to give Cleveland that final margin.
Yes, Jason Stark tweet. Brandon Geyer's the FP Santangelo of his generation. 31 hit by pitch this year, most by any since Jason Kendall in 1998, and he got hit with the 0-2 pitch that brought a run in.
It was a huge hit by pitch because it gave Kluber a 2-run lead in the first inning. That made all the difference. It really did. Now Kluber's pitching aggressively. You don't have to worry about one hit beating you. The FP Santangelo of his generation. Great tweet from Jason Stark.
Yes, so Major League Baseball moves up the start time an hour because it's supposed to rain in Cleveland. It's Arrieta against Bauer. Arrieta, nothing special so far in the playoffs. You look at this graphic, and he's pitched 11, 6 runs, 12 hits, 1 walk, 10 strikeouts, and 2 home runs. The Cubbies, thankfully, they wrapped it up in 6 because I didn't trust Arrieta in a Game 7. And I'll tell you what, Arrieta does he's worse at holding runners on than Lester.
Yeah, and Arrieta, nothing special in the playoffs. Arrieta over the back half of the regular season, he was good. He was solid. He was not the spectacular Jake Arrieta from 2015, from the first half of 2016. And look at this. Man, November, and it's October. I know it's still October. In my mind, it's November, because November, the toughest month of the year for any handicapper. You got sports going. You got college basketball and NBA. Here's a World Series and NFL and college football. So you're going to note over the course of the next month, we're going to have a lot less, or a fair bit. I mean, Wednesdays normally do a deep dive when we get into a topic. Not over the course of the next month. So many games to talk about, including right here in the World Series. So Arrieta mediocre. Not mediocre. Good, but not spectacular down the stretch. What about Bauer? I mean, Bauer's finger is finally healed. But the guy's only faced 4 batters in the last 20 days. Is this the type of game we're going to see some runs tonight, you think, after the Cubs got shut out last night?
Yes, I would agree with you on that one. I mean, how long, you figure no Miller, how long can this guy go? Remember, it was like a Halloween video, Halloween movie, the last time he was out there, gushing blood.
No argument here. The first lean and the total, looking at, we're looking at 7 for the total today as opposed to 6.5 yesterday. But even at that number, I could only look to play this one up and over.
Yeah. Who knows what happens if the rain comes early, too. We have to sit through a rain delay. That's something the managers have to worry about as well. Big game breakdown up next. We'll start with football. Gus Bradley on the hot seat. His last stand, Jacksonville and Tennessee. And we'll get to USC, Cal, and Virginia Tech and Pitt coming up on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Do your research before you bet. Check out our ratings guide to see which books have the best ratings and sign-up bonuses. Open up several accounts. Shop for lines at SBRodds.com. Always be ahead of the game.
Back on SportsBit, Paulie and Teddy. Time for Big Game Breakdown. As always, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Thursday night football. The ratings are down. This won't help. Jacksonville against Tennessee. Titans 3.5, 43.5 at home. Could be the last stand for Gus Bradley. By the way, according to official NFL rules, the team with the most wins in the AFC South makes the playoffs, no matter how bad. That's unfortunate. Gus Bradley, 14-40 as head coach of the Jacksonville. A few extra days after the game could be a timing for a transition. If they lose, they could fire him. Was it rock bottom Sunday against the Raiders? They lost. Jackson, Ramsey thrown out of the game. They had a ton of penalties, and they didn't score until their 10th possession, and they couldn't stop the Raider offense, Teddy.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this from Gus Bradley last year at this exact time. They were going to London, and everyone said if they lose this game, Bradley's going to get fired. That gives them, they have 2 weeks to have the new head coach install his offense and defense and game plan and systems, et cetera, et cetera. And then what happened to the Jags? They won that game in London. They almost blew it, and then they came back and won it at the end. Now it's a year later. The Jaguars haven't gotten any better, and it was as ugly as it gets. I mean, did they reach rock bottom against Oakland? Yes. 13 penalties for 122 yards. 2 guys getting thrown out of the game. Gus Bradley, quote, "During the game, it's proven we lost our poise. We became frustrated that things didn't go exactly as we had planned, and some things took place on the field. You need to keep your poise and keep your composure." It ended up affecting us. Of course, I don't know that it made a difference. They lost their poise because they were getting their asses kicked on the field, and that was a big part of it. It wasn't like it was a tight game and the mental mistakes doomed them. Paul Posluszky had a pretty good quote on this as well, Paul.
Yeah, he said, "I think it's terrible. We need to act like professionals at all times, regardless of what happens. To have guys get thrown out, multiple penalties over and over again, that's not who we are, and we can't tolerate that moving forward. I've never seen anything like that before. Unacceptable on a lot of different levels. Fans don't want to see it. Guys in the media don't want to see it. We don't want to be part of it. Just from a higher standard of play in the NFL, we can't have that," end quote. Now, for the Titans, what are we doing with Mariota here? Is he regressed?
It feels like he's taking a step back. I mean, last year, yards per pass and passer rating better than they were this year. And from rookie year to second year, you expect improvements, especially with an upgrade of players around him. But Mariota, and we saw it very clearly against Andrew Luck with that game tied at 20 in the fourth quarter. Luck confident, cool, poised. Mariota jittery, nervous, mistake prone. And now he's tied for 5th in the NFL with 9 turnovers, and 3 of those 9, including the game clincher last week, have been returned for touchdowns.
I do not like this quote from Malarkey. He thinks maybe he's lost confidence. He said, that might be the case. Yes, I've talked to him about it. He doesn't want to let anybody down. Doesn't want to make mistakes for his teammates, for this team, for this organization. I wouldn't say he does it overly, but sometimes if it's a gray area to him right now, he doesn't want to take the risk. End quote. Those are troubling comments that the quarterback has lost confidence. Interesting.
No question. Especially, I'm sorry, Paul, I didn't mean to cut you off, but especially when you're talking about a favorite that's already been bet up and an underdog that nobody wants. You know what I mean? Nobody wants the Jags. There's already been Tennessee money. And now Malarkey's saying, I'm not convinced my QB's got it right up here. That's a red flag for me, and it tells me that my choice tonight will not be the Tennessee Titans minus the points.
All right, Thursday, doubleheader on ESPN. College football. Virginia Tech on the road to take on Pitt. Hokies 4.5, 56.5 the total. A little pat on the back here. Sports bit pat on the back. We've been telling you all season about Evans, the Virginia Tech quarterback. We'll talk about him again. 259 yards, 2 touchdowns against Miami. Ran for 98 yards and a touchdown. Look at the passer rating. 167. 8th in the nation. 1,600 passing yards with 19 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and 3 rushing touchdowns as well. He's doing it all.
He's been a monster. He's absolutely been a monster for Virginia Tech. Now, Pat Narduzzi, he hoped to bring a really tough defensive approach to Pitt. The same way he coached at Michigan State, a defensive mind, and you figure this D would be physical and fast and nasty. And there's been none of the three. It struggled all season long. Now, they have been matched up against spread offenses and running quarterbacks. That's not necessarily Narduzzi's strength. And, of course, that's what Virginia Tech is doing this year in the first year under Justin Fuente. That leaves that defense vulnerable once again. 12 prep days can help. They were off last Saturday. It can only help in that regard with a good defensive mind, but hard to trust that Pitt defense to get stops right.
Yeah, that's what. Good point. I don't understand why they're going up tempo on offense. Why would they? It reminds me of Cal in Oregon, what we talked about. Why are you going so fast when your defense stinks? And look at Pitt the last 6 games.
Well, yeah, the Pitt has not been really pushing the pace on offense. You look at the last 6 games. Look at this chart right here. Over, and over. And they're not just going over. They are flying over the total by an average of about 3 touchdowns per game. And it hasn't been pace. It's been all good offense and bad defense. That's why the markets have been reluctant to total them appropriately. Nathan Peterman's been real good. 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, another QB with only 2 interceptions all season. The running backs have a deep rotation. You got Connor, Quadri Henderson, Shantez Moss. Between them, more than 1,000, I believe more than 1,100 yards on the ground. So it's a balanced offense for both of these two teams. We'll get back to this game when it comes to play of the daytime.
All right, the doubleheader on, again, the second game of the doubleheader on ESPN. Pac-12, Cal and USC. Trojans at home, 16.5, 75.5 the total. You look at Darnold, who took over when they made the quarterback change. He is 7th in pass efficiency, 8.9 yards per attempt, 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Offensive coordinator T. Martin, the best thing is just knowing the quarterback. Early in the year, it was two QBs. Once we announced who the QB was, it was going to be, okay, what is he like? You have to call the plays if you're him. We're kind of getting into a nice rhythm, end quote. And that's exactly what's happened the last few games is USC's moving the football.
Yeah, we talked about Jared Evans a minute ago, and he's number 8 in pass efficiency. That's because Sam Darnold's 7, and the numbers have been great so far this season. When he's averaging almost 9 yards per attempt, you're doing something right. Plus, they're coming off a bye. Helton's coming off the bye week to tweak the offense more around Darnold's skin. Because remember, Darnold's skills. He's a far better runner than the original starter, Max Brown. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see USC have some more read option in there tonight and more rollouts that give the quarterback the throw/run decision to make. That's something that Arnold, in theory, should be able to do pretty well. And USC's off a bye.
Yeah.
There'll be a big difference in freshness compared to Cal. They've had only 6 days off since that overtime game versus Oregon. A draining game. There was 203 total offensive snaps in that contest.
Yeah, and Davis Webb's a good quarterback. The Tech transfer, number 4 in the nation in passing yards. He's got a ton of passing touchdowns as well. 27 passing touchdowns. 5 of the last 6 Cal games decided on the final possession. What do you think? Do you trust that defense? And that's a lot of points, though, for USC to be laying.
Yeah, you talk about all these Cal games coming down to the wire. 5 of the last 6 down to last possession, 2 of them in overtime, 1 in double overtime. The team with the ball last has been winning lots of Cal games this year, but this is good a defense that Cal has faced in 2016. I wonder if Davis Webb, and a tired Bears defense is going to be able to compete against USC in the second half of this ball game. It's not a game that I plan on getting involved with from a wagering perspective.
Up next, the deep dive will be the NBA, the doubleheader on ESPN tonight. with OKC and the Sixers and the Rockets and the Lakers coming up on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Go to SBRodds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on SportsBit, Paulie and Teddy. Deep dive NBA. Do that in a second. The doubleheader tonight on ESPN. First, a vicious beat, Teddy. Go back to the NBA last night. The Jazz led 102-99 with less than 4 minutes in Portland. What happened?
A 14-2 run for Portland to close out the game at the Rose Garden. They've had a fair few of those in recent years. The Blazers looked like they were going to lose straight up. Ended up not only winning, but covering the spread. And that was a game in which Portland took a bunch of money, too, because Favors was out for Utah, along with Gordon Hayward. And boy, they missed arguably their two best offensive threats down the stretch on opening night.
All right, game one of a doubleheader on ESPN. The Thunder on the road to take on the Sixers. OKC 8.5. 208 the total. Westbrook may open from the gate well. Chance to put up big numbers, take a run at that MVP. And now it's his team with Durant going to Golden State. And it might be a difficult team for the markets to project tempo because they're starting Sabonis, the kid from Gonzaga, and Adams up front. They were one of the best rebounding teams in the league last year. They might even be better now. Scary.
Well, yeah, I mean, the markets are going to have a very interesting time pricing Oklahoma City when it comes to totals in early season play. Because Sabonis and Adams, those two guys are starting. That's a slow-tempo half-court team when you project it. Even though Sabonis ran reasonably well in the WCC last year, he's not someone at an NBA level that I project to be a run-and-gun kind of guy. So we think of Westbrook and OKC as this up-tempo team, but they've got two big men that are stodgy and might well slow them down. And you talked about last year how good at rebounding. They were one of the best teams in rebounding history last year. In the history of the NBA, they might even be better this year. They're going to be bigger, I'll tell you that much. And that means they're likely to corral an even higher percentage of the board.
Oh, Brett Brown's going to be wondering when can I actually coach my entire roster because they open up with Noel, Bayless, and Ben Simmons is hurt. This is year 4 of the project here when they tanked for 3 years. None of these guys can stay healthy. They get the horrible news with Ben Simmons before the season.
Yeah, well, I mean, the upside for Brett Brown is that in terms of when he's actually going to get to coach his whole roster, probably never. I don't think he's going to last long enough to coach it. They're already writing his epitaph in the Philadelphia newspapers. And it's certainly been, well, most of Brown's issues have been injuries, which he can't control, and management decisions, which he can't control. This is a roster with some upside. I mean, all of these high draft choices that they've taken, and I know most of them haven't panned out thus far. When you think about guys like MCW, who was a rookie of the year, and then the next year they're in, no, he's not good, and now he's barely hanging on in the NBA. We think about Joel Embiid, who hasn't been a factor. Noel hasn't been a factor. It wasn't like Okafor was a monster last year. They've gotten all these picks. They haven't gotten a ton out of them yet. There's upside on this roster, but whether we see it on opening night, I wouldn't count on it.
Yep. All right. The second game of the doubleheader. Looking forward to this one. The Rockets against the Lakers from Los Angeles. Rockets 6.5. Look at that total. 224. Offensive marriage made in heaven. D'Antoni takes over. He's got Harden playing the point. The Rockets were 21st in defense last year with Dwight Howard. Now he's gone. And D'Antoni doesn't really care about defense. And the only guy who's known for defense on that team is Beverly, and he's hurt.
Yeah, but I don't know if they're going to care a whole lot about defense. I mean, Mike D'Antoni, when he first came to the NBA with Phoenix, and his stuff was unique and original, and he certainly made a lot of waves. His last 2 stints didn't work out that well. Let's just put it that way. And the issue, both in LA and in New York, were the team didn't play a lick of defense. And from what I've seen from the Rockets, what I've read about the Rockets is they're still not playing a lick of defense. My mentality in the NBA is I don't want to lay points with teams that can't get stops in the fourth quarter. Houston's going to be one of those teams. I can tell you that already.
Now for the Lakers, Luke Walton takes over. Thank God they got rid of Byron Scott. He was unfrozen caveman lawyer where he didn't believe in the three-pointer. He didn't know what the hell he was doing. First of all, what do you think of Luke Walton? You're surprised he took the job, and can they count on Russell being the man now in the franchise?
I mean, there's hope for Luke Walton. Do I think he's going to command the respect of this roster? Not necessarily. Do I look at the Lakers as a team that's poised to take the next step this year? No, God, no. Lakers are right there with Brooklyn and with LA as the very worst teams in the NBA. Now, D'Angelo Russell going to be the man? I didn't see any signs of that last year. They're talking about getting leadership from Luol Deng. I haven't seen him offer a whole lot of leadership in that regard. And he's only a role player at this stage of his career. You know, they bring in Jose Calderon. I thought that was a decent signing, but he's not going to play tonight. And I don't know that this offense has any kind of chemistry coming into the season, even against that awful Rockets D.
All right, it'll be fun to watch. Crazy total, and we'll see how the markets adjust to this Houston team. Could be a fun game with in-game wagering. Another winner yesterday, the Indians. 16-5 run with the play of the day. 24-10-1 on the football season. Back to football, back to Virginia Tech and Pitt. Teddy, what are we doing?
Let's take a look at game number 107-108, Pitt and Virginia Tech over the total, 56.5, the current number. We've got Pitt as a team that's getting touchdowns in the red zones. Connor and that running back depth, they get 7s instead of 3s when they're close. Virginia Tech's been doing the same thing all year. Look for touchdowns, not field goals. Look for Pitt and Virginia Tech to get over the number. That's our play of the day.
All right, another fast-paced show. Thursday, a couple NBA games, and we got the marquee games in college football. Clemson, Florida State, West Virginia, Okie State, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Washington and Utah. We'll talk to you Thursday on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.